Well, we've made it into 2022, and now the question becomes, how do we make this year the best year of our lives? I think that for most people, or for a lot of people, this question needs to start with their health. And the reason for that is if your health isn't doing very well, then nothing in your life really will perform at its best, right? And so just as Mr. Hippocrates said many, many moons ago, all disease begins in the gut. And so in this video, I want to talk about the gut-brain connection, and this will basically be a broad overview of this very, very large topic. And then we'll do some future follow-up videos on individual subtopics from this individual video. So my name is Dr. Matthew Shim. I am the owner of Peak Brain Performance Centers here in beautiful Colorado Springs. And what we're talking about today is the gut-brain axis. So the gut-brain axis consists of a bidirectional communication between the central nervous system, which is the brain and the spinal cord, and the enteric nervous system, which is located in the gut. And so with that, there are situations where a brain injury may affect things in the gut, which we'll discuss later, or how dysfunction in the gut, like leaky gut, like we talked about in the last one, or different autoimmune conditions, or acid production issues, all these different things that may lead to issues that portray as issues in the brain. So what are some things that we may see based on dysfunction in the gut-brain axis? In this article, they talk about the main ones. And I think in a future video, we'll pick out some of the main ones that I see in my practice, and we'll do further in-depth videos on those individual topics. But in this article, they talk about how autism can be seen because of this, depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, anorexia, epilepsy, pain disorders, Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's and dementia, stroke and brain injury, multiple sclerosis, obstructive sleep apnea, Huntington's disease, infections, ADHD, PTSD, obesity, irritable bowel, and ALS. So what are some things that may influence the gut that may influence the brain, or things that may influence the brain that may influence the gut? So on the left side of this picture here, you can see that there are a number of different things like diet, like your genetics, like how you were birthed, drugs and exercise that you do. Those things can have different consequences on the brain or on the gut, and then how they work together may show up as symptoms in one or the other organ. Then on the right side of this image, you can see how there are different things that may manifest due to problems in the brain or the gut, such as having fear or cognitive dysfunction or maybe being stressed, different things like that. So this article says there are many factors that have been shown to have a modulating effect on both the brain and the microbiota, which is the bacteria in the gut, including socioeconomic status, host diet, congenital factors, environmental factors, exercise, medications, and mode of delivery at birth. So just to finish off this topic here, I want to talk about a study that was done talking about the effect that TBI has on gut integrity. And this kind of plays back to last video when we talked about leaky gut, but I think it shows the importance of the gut-brain connection and how something that happens to the brain can have consequences on the gut. And so what they did in this study is they took some rats and they split them into two groups. And they took one group and gave them a concussion with what they called a pneumatic impactor, where they basically just beat the rat's brain. And then they put a sham group where they didn't have anything done to them. What they found was that there were significant changes in the gut microbiome as evident as early as 2 hours after the TBI as compared with pre-injury samples and sham rats. So like we talked about before, if you think about your gut kind of like a barrier and how it has a barrier to let some things pass through, but not everything. Similar to the way a screen door works, in the fact that if you have a screen door on your home, it now lets this nice breeze and outside air into your home, but it doesn't allow for major things. And the example I gave is like a stranger walking into your house or a stray animal, unless they were to physically open that door and pass through, or maybe tear a hole into the screen of that door. Well, the same thing applies to the integrity of the gut, and the fact that our gut is a little leaky, but we don't want it to be hyper leaky or excessively leaky. And so the reason for that is we want small particles of certain things to be able to pass through, but the problem occurs whenever we have larger molecules and particles that pass through. And so In this article, they talk about how there's something called zonulin and occludin, which is basically kind of like the mortar between the bricks of a wall. And so whenever those certain proteins, zonulin and occludin, they become dysfunctional and they start to get dysregulated after a TBI, now the gut barrier begins to open up and larger molecules can pass through. And tying this back to autoimmunity, which we talked about in a couple lectures before, is we all have this underlying low level of autoimmunity. And the reason for that is our immune system has to be surveying our tissues to make sure everything is basically hunky-dory. And so with that, our immune system surveys the land and it says, hey, this is pancreas and this is thyroid and this is adrenal and this is kidney and all these other things. And the problem occurs whenever we now have leaky gut. There are large molecules of things that get through, and there are certain molecules like, let's say, gluten or dairy or soy or things like that. And so now whenever these things get through, your immune system tags it, but people with autoimmune condition have a little bit worse off, because what happens is your immune system tags that tissue that now passed through as a foreign invader. But the problem is your immune system doesn't take any chances, and it's going to tag anything that even looks like that invader. And the situation occurs now with certain people with autoimmune conditions is you have certain molecules or particles of food or proteins and stuff like that that get tagged, and then they look awfully similar to our certain different parts of our own healthy tissue. So this is where we develop autoimmune conditions, and the fact that now, let's say I ingest gluten and it gets through my barrier because I have a leaky gut, and then that gluten particle or gluten molecule looks very, very similar to the cerebellum. And so now your immune system goes rogue and it starts attacking your cerebellum. And you can see how that doesn't really make for a real happy time when your own immune system is attacking your brain. So I hope you were able to learn something. I hope this video demonstrates the importance of the brain to the gut and the gut to the brain. If you have any questions, feel free to email me or give my office a call. I'd love to chat with you. Other than that, I'll see you in the next one.